over the weekend with American piracy of a Iranian cargo ship. Did the SEALs shoot at civilians?
Well, my understanding is that there was a Iranian cargo ship that was making transit out of the Strait of Hormuz into the Gulf there, and in accordance with the agreement that was reached between the United States and Iran in Islamabad about the ceasefire, and an illegal American blockade that has no legitimacy under international law and is a complete violation of the ceasefire agreement, demanded that the ship stop. The ship didn't. Then the United States, the U.S. Navy vessel destroyer, told the ship to evacuate the engine room. Then they fired on the engine room, causing the ship to come to a halt. Then U.S. Marine raiding group was landed on the vessel and took control of the vessel. It is an act of piracy. There's no legitimacy for this action whatsoever.
Wow. What would be the goal of something like this? Why would Trump and Hegseth even order this?
It's pure psychological operation. This is about the United States spinning the events so that the president can claim that he has the upper hand, that, if, for instance, Iran were to go to Islamabad and agree to a deal, the president would say it's only because of the strong stance that he's taken in enforcing this blockade and compelling the Iranians to, see the common sense and coming to an agreement. That's all this is. It has nothing to do with, legitimately stopping flow. Even let's just acknowledge that this is an illegal act, like much of what the United States does, but the goal is to effectively halt shipping out of the Strait of Hormuz by the Iranians, and this most certainly is not doing that. So it's just pure theater of the absurd.
So as a result of this, J.D. Vance and his two Zionist monitors, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are cooling their heels in a hotel room in Islamabad, and the Iranian negotiating team is home in Tehran. You blame them?
No, first of all, if I were the Iranians, I wouldn't go anywhere near the United States at this juncture. The United States has a history of using negotiations as a ploy to kill negotiating teams and to carry out, attacks against Iran. But moreover, there's people need to understand that we were very close to having an agreement the first time around. The Trump administration, J.D. Vance and Witkoff and Kushner, they didn't come in prepared at all. They were prepared for nothing. People were wondering why there were so many phone calls. It's because the United States didn't bring anything to the table. The Iranians brought everything to the table, the deal, everything, all the research. They had all the fact papers, everything worked out. And so what would happen is the Iranians would put a deal down. The Americans would review it, ask some questions. The Iranians would give the answers. Now, because there is no position, because they went in blind, J.D. Vance has to call back and say, hey, this is what the Iranians are saying. And Trump, of course, not prepared at all. I mean, if people understood how ill-prepared this president is, they'd be embarrassed. So Trump isn't prepared at all. He doesn't have briefing papers in front of him. He's receiving a verbal report and then giving back instructions based upon nothing, because he doesn't know what the details are or anything. He doesn't have his staff prepping him on this. This is just purely reactionary work. And then Bibi Netanyahu sticks his head in at the appropriate time about nuclear issues. They were actually this close, according to Professor Morandi, to signing a Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, which would have brought an end to this war. But the president was told, you can't sign this deal because it makes it look like you're weak. It makes it look like you're doing the Iranian bidding. Well, of course he is. The Iranians are the only one putting talking points on the table. The United States has no talking points. And so J.D. Vance is pulled from the J.D. Vance, Kushner, and Witkoff are pulled from the negotiations, and they're brought to an end as Trump then proceeds to make his ridiculous, demands, and then back it up with posturing that, look, we're going to blockade you until you do what we want you to do, kind of thing. This is the kind of stupidity, insanity that governs what's going on here. But it's all about posturing right now to create an impression that the United States is in charge, that the United States is the one calling the shots. We're in charge of nothing. The Iranians are calling the shots. They're the ones who have put down the terms. And now the Iranians recognize the United States is incapable of negotiating in good faith. And so there's no reason to negotiate. And if anybody thinks the Iranians are concerned about what happens next, they're not. In fact, there's a good portion of the Iranian government, together with the majority of Iranian people, that just want to bring this war to an end. And I don't mean by surrendering, an end by keep the fighting going. And, a warning, and this is, one of the things that may prevent this war. If this war starts again, Iran will more than likely terminate the viability of one or more Gulf Arab states, meaning they'll strike power production and desalination plants, making life impossible. If you do that in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, these cities will empty. You do that in Kuwait City, it's gone. You do that in Manama, Bahrain empties. And the Iranians, they're not going to play the escalation game. They're not going to say, okay, we're going to wait and see what kind of strike you hit, and then we'll hit similar targets. They're going to go straight for the jugular. And this will terminate as modern nation states, one or more Gulf Arab states. And the Gulf Arab states are very nervous about this right now. And the others are going to recognize that they will have their economic capacity to earn money permanently degraded. Saudi Arabia, a rich nation right now, it won't be a rich nation if the United States resumes attacking Iran. So these are the stakes that are at play here. Plus, Ansarallah, the Houthis said they're going to shut down Bab el-Mandeb, which is the death knell to the Saudi oil economy and the ruination of the world. Donald Trump really can't afford to go to war right now, but he's really given himself no other option.
Are the Egyptians and Turks getting ready to do anything?
Well, I don't know about the Egyptians. I mean, I know the Egyptians have been frustrated for some time now. Israel's playing a very dangerous game with the Turks. You don't. It's one thing before Israel began bombing Iran to say that Turkey is the next Iran. It's another thing after Israel has bombed Iran not once but twice, both using surprise attacks, to say that Turkey is the next Iran. And the Turks are picking up on this, and they're saying, "Well, we're not Iran. We'll actually take you out." And so there's big rhetoric taking place right now. And Turkey, unlike Iran, has the ability to project meaningful ground power through Syria to the Israeli border. Turkey has a very strong air force that could challenge the Israelis. Turkey is intimately familiar with Israeli capabilities. The Israelis used to train all of their long-range strike missions using the Anatolian Peninsula as the training ground. So Israel's got to be careful here, but and Erdogan's making very aggressive statements towards Israel, and so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Last night, the president made one of his off-the-wall statements saying the United States and Iran would jointly excavate Iran's nuclear enriched material. I mean, this is really an escape from reality for him to make a statement like that.
Yeah, no, jointly excavate is very strong. I think what had been agreed to in Geneva before the most recent round surprise attack, the act of perfidy by the United States, is that a full accounting of Iran's 60% enriched uranium would be had under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and that United States inspectors would be part of the IAEA inspection teams. And so, that would be, have UN and have the IAEA inspectors there, include with American personnel. Now Donald Trump lives in a fantasy world where he's going to fly in American military forces. They're going to set up some sort of forward operating base and bring in heavy excavation equipment, and they're going to be the ones digging it out, and they're going to be the ones taking control of this. That just simply isn't going to happen. Trump lives in a fantasy world. His advisors are the singular worst advisors in the world about this very issue. And he's just setting himself up for defeat and frustration because Iran will not buckle. I think he's getting word from people, Hegseth and others, that we did so much damage to Iran that the Iranians have no choice but to cave. They can't afford to continue. Let me set the record straight. We did no damage to Iran. None. Zero. We've superficially blew up empty buildings. We dropped some bridges and so that. But in terms of impeding Iran's strategic capacity to continue this conflict, we've accomplished nothing. Their leadership is as strong as ever. And the underground missile cities are, according to the Iranians, they've produced, more missiles since the war ended than they were at a higher rate than they were producing before. And these are the advanced missiles, because they'd all pre-positioned the production equipment, the production materials. And so they're cranking missiles out. They've re-upped their arsenals. And if this war starts, they're going to come in, like I said, with the most powerful missiles, the most accurate missiles up front. And they're not going to wait for the United States to do sufficient damage. The first bombs that drop, the Iranians should, according to what they've been saying, hit not just Israel with lethal blows, but as I said, the United Arab Emirates and at least one other state, maybe Bahrain, will be taken off the map in terms of being a viable nation state.
Are you familiar with this story making the rounds that Trump on Saturday night or sometime over the weekend asked General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, for an explanation of how the nuclear codes work, and General Kane said no and left the White House?
I'm familiar with two such incidents. Again, I can't confirm them because I'm not in the White House. This is just a report. But let me just, so your audience understands that this isn't just blind speculation. I have been in the White House Situation Room. I have given briefings to, the deputies level. I understand how the White House process works. I understand how the interagency process works. I understand how the JCS interfaces with the president. And so, through this experience, you get, a pattern of behavior. And that's one of the things you do as an intelligence analyst is you assess patterns. You look for repeating patterns. Past practices do repeat. So I have a good idea how the system works, especially when it comes to nuclear weapons. And so when I heard that the president, when he tweeted earlier before the ceasefire that he was going to erase Iran, that was code word for the use of nuclear weapons. And my understanding is that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff put him on notice that no, they won't authorize, they will not concur with the use of nuclear weapons because it's a violation of international law. It violates issues of proportionality. It violates issues of distinction. And there's no justification for it. Nuclear weapons are designed, according to doctrine, to deter. You're not deterring anything with a preemptive use of nuclear weapons in an environment that doesn't scream, we have to use nuclear weapons to eliminate an existential threat. So the president was put on notice that, and he immediately responded by a tweet where he, in all caps, said, and no nuclear weapons, as if to correct the record. To get ahead of any potential reporting coming out of the White House that he tried to use nukes and was told no. And so now this time what we have here is in the president's mind, the psychosis of this man. He threatened nukes. The chairman said no. And so he agreed to enter this peace process. But now that the peace process is collapsing, he's falling back on the reality that if they continue, bombing the way they did before, it'll be another defeat, that we don't have a remedy to this. We don't have the magic solution. And the Iranians do have our number. They're going to ring it on a daily basis until Israel's destroyed and Gulf Arab states are destroyed. And so Trump is trying to say we have no choice but to use nuclear weapons preemptively right now to eliminate this threat. And the chairman repeated what he told the president later. No, this is unlawful. There's no imminent threat worthy of this. There literally is no, you can't speak of proportionality. The damage Iran's doing to us is not proportional to the damage that we would do by using nuclear weapons on Iran. And then again, the issue of distinction, dropping bombs, for instance, on Isfahan would kill civilians in numbers that would, boggle the mind. And so Fortunately, even though this president has said that the Constitution doesn't matter to him, that he relies on his own personal sense of morality. This is a man whose morals say he wants to use nuclear weapons and slaughter hundreds of thousands of innocent people. Fortunately, we have men and women in uniform who took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, who take this oath very seriously.
Well, and I guess if the story is true, Larry Johnson's reported it from two sources. General Kane is one of them.
Yes.
Taking the oath seriously.
He takes it very. And the interesting thing is that he was handpicked by this president to be a yes man. They got rid of the Biden era guys. Kane was somebody who was passed over for 4 stars as a lieutenant general and went into retirement. And they brought him out of retirement and gave him a 4th star. And the feeling was this would be a hyper-aggressive man that would do the president's bidding. And, Kane has proven to be a very aggressive, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. But on a number of occasions, for instance, he cautioned against this war. If the New York Times reporting is correct, he told the president, don't believe the Israelis. The Israelis oversell their capabilities. And there's no reason to believe that regime change will be as easy as the Israelis claim it to be. And so Kane, offered caution there. And then he turned the president down not just once but twice when it comes to the use of nuclear weapons. And I've always said that the men and women who serve, they take this oath seriously, especially the higher you get up in the ranks. There may be problems. We may have politicized the military and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to nuclear weapons, the military understands full well what the consequences of using nuclear weapons would be. The potential for expansion globally. And once you establish a precedent, one thing I ask people to think about is this. Russia has said they will not be the first to use nuclear weapons. But if the United States changes the paradigm of the use of nuclear weapons from we'll never use it because we recognize after Hiroshima and Nagasaki that these weapons can't be used, to we'll use it when it's convenient for us to use it to change a conventional military power equation. That becomes an intimidation factor, meaning the United States now will intimidate everybody saying, we've used nukes. You sure you want to take us on in Ukraine conventionally because we use nukes? And the Russians will have to level the playing field. They'll have to do it for national survival. And there's a lot of people in Russia right now saying that it's time for Russia to use nukes preemptively against Europe to set a precedent. So this could go bad very quickly. We should never use nuclear weapons.
Let's go back to where we started, Hormuz. Who controls the strait? Is it open or is it closed?
The Iranians control it, and it's open when the Iranians want it open. It's closed when the Iranians want it closed, and there are variations in between. Right now, Iran is allowing some ships to pass through, but those ships have to meet certain protocols, and they have to be approved by the Iranian Navy.
Do you think that Trump and the Israelis have given up the ghost on regime change and degrading Iran's ballistic missile capability, 2 of their, from time to time, stated goals?
I believe that the Israelis understand that there will be no regime change. That is not going to happen. The reporting is that the Israelis have acknowledged that they're going to have to learn to live with the Iranian regime in a post-conflict environment. The Israelis have not yet given up on either degrading Iran's nuclear capacity and degrading Iran's ballistic missile capacity. They believe if they continue this conflict that eventually, they'll be able to find the right combination of strikes to do this. I believe they're wrong, and I believe many people in the Pentagon believe that they're wrong. But, there are those, and unfortunately one of them is named Pete Hegseth, who believe that by continuing this conflict, the United States will be able to do what we couldn't do in the first 40 days of this conflict, which is to degrade Iran's ballistic missile and drone launch capabilities.
Here's a 2-bit political hack masquerading as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, arguing on one of the talk shows that destroying power plants and bridges is not a war crime. I guess in his own mind, he could have added grammar schools for girls. Chris, cut number 4.
I hope we don't have to go back to a military option, but President Trump's made it very clear. And by the way, bridges, power plants that are run by the IRGC, which runs the entire military, are absolute legitimate military targets, not only now, but have been historically. That is a false, fake, and ridiculous notion that this is some type of war crime.
Talking about the Revolutionary Guard runs a bridge.
I mean, this is fiction. First of all, 2 points. One, at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, when the Iranians were looking to demobilize hundreds of thousands of fighters into an economy that was fairly dysfunctional, one of the ways they avoided having mobs of military veterans unemployed on the streets was to allow the Revolutionary Guard Command to create businesses and then to give those businesses contracts related to infrastructure development inside Iran. And so many of the companies and industries that build roads, that build bridges, et cetera, are run by the IRGC. Just because an IRGC company builds something doesn't mean that it has a military capacity. It's just a unique feature of post-war Iran. 2, and perhaps more importantly, if you were going to make the argument that a bridge had military capabilities, you would have dropped that bridge already. We targeted bridges that had genuine military capabilities. If you were going to strike a dual-use power generation capacity, one that was providing power to, say, a military factory or a military installation, we would have bombed that already. But here we are, after 40 days of incessant bombardment, being told that suddenly there's a new list of relevant targets. There aren't. There's just a new list of targets of bridges and power plants that have nothing to do with Iranian defense industry and everything to do with the civilian population. And this is the war crime. In a trial, I would just simply ask, why did you bomb this? Why didn't you bomb this in the first 40 days? It was so essential to military victory. I mean, you're hitting 1,000 targets a day, according to Pete Hegseth, 1,000 points on the ground. Why didn't you factor in these targets in that if they're so essential? And the answer is because they were civilian targets and you knew it. And that's why they were excluded. And now you want to put them on, which means that this is collective punishment. It has nothing to do with, the legitimate degradation of a target that has dual use capacity. So this is a war criminal regime. And, sadly, the military, if they go along with this target deck, is committing war crimes.
Trump said about 15 minutes ago that the ceasefire is over on Wednesday and the war will resume. What will the likely consequences be to Israel and to the Gulf and to American assets out there if Trump and Netanyahu resume the war at the level at which they started it 6 weeks ago?
Well, the Iranians have made it clear that they're not going to, start slow and finish fast. They're not going to wait for the United States and Israel to set the pace, which is what they did in the 40 days. The escalation, the nature of targets, et cetera, that were, engaged by Iran were largely defined by the nature of the Israeli-American strikes against Iran. Here, the Iranians, I believe, will start with the notion that because the United States is incapable of negotiating in good faith, that you must assume that any military action that's now taken is done to eliminate the regime of the Islamic Republic, and therefore this is an existential war. Therefore, just go for the jugular from the start. And I think this is what you're going to see if we start attacking Iran. I think you're going to see Iran hit some Gulf Arab states harder than they've ever been hit Israel very hard, start taking out key infrastructure, and maybe reach out and touch the United States in a few places as well. That the United States has grown overconfident in terms of operation. But, this is going to be a one-way street. When the war starts, we will be bombing empty buildings. We will be blowing up bridges and railroad tracks that have no fundamental value from a military standpoint. And Iran is going to be, striking back with absolute devastation. and the defeat will be obvious after the first 3 days when, as I said, perhaps Abu Dhabi, Dubai, maybe another city will be unable to sustain life on the scope and scale necessary to be to retain the stature that they enjoy today. People will be forced to flee by the hundreds of thousands.
Whatever happened to Trump's Board of Peace?
Well, the funny thing is the Board of Peace was largely funded by Gulf Arab states. And a large percentage of the members were Gulf Arab states. Again, if I were advising the president, I would have gotten the Board of Peace involved in a negotiated compromise settlement on the Strait of Hormuz regarding revenue collection and revenue sharing. And let the board manage this. It gives credence to the board, gives them a viable project that they can brag about later. It keeps the Iranians happy by allowing them to maintain the fact that they have their hand on the throat of the Strait of Hormuz. And it would appease the regional partners because it would allow money to be raised that could be used to reconstruct not just Iran, but United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, etc. And so and also there's just so much that this board could have done and could have been involved in. Would have given United Nations stamp of approval, etc. But the board members don't trust Trump anymore, and so I think the Board of Peace is just a derelict organization right now.
Wow, Scotty, thank you very much. Deeply appreciated, my dear friend. Good luck with what you're going to be doing in the next few days. And
ਅੱਜ ਕਾਲਜ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬੰਦ ਕੁੜੀਏ, ਅੱਜ ਕਾਲਜ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬੰਦ ਕੁੜੀਏ, ਨਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਲੰਘ ਕੁੜੀਏ, ਨਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਲੰਘ ਕੁੜੀਏ। आजा मेरे कोल ठंडा पानी पियाल सा, जो तेरी मर्जी ओयो मंगाल सा। ना हो गर्मी विच तंग कुड़िए, ना हो गर्मी विच तंग कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया तू मरदी। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया तू मरदी। आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए, आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए। सुने नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे, मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे। सुने नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे, मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे। एवें खल्लिए तू जिवें पीती भंग कुड़िए, एवें खल्लिए तू जिवें पीती भंग कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए। अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया है मरदी। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया है मरदी। आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए अज काल जी हो गया बंद कुड़िए अज काल जी हो गया बंद कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए सुन नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे सुन नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे एवे खली है तू जीवे पीती पंग कुड़िए एवे खली है तू जीवे पीती पंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए अज काल जी हो गया बंद कुड़िए अज काल जी हो गया बंद कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए ना बीच बाजारा लंग कुड़िए